It was a bright Sunday morning when the small town came alive with the sound of birds and laughter. Families were heading to the nearby forest park, a place known for its tall pine trees, clear streams, and quiet walking trails. Among those families was a little girl named Lila. She was only 8, full of energy and curious about everything she saw. Her parents had planned a small picnic to spend time together. Her younger brother was 4 and liked to follow her around everywhere she went. The day started normally. The sun shone through the trees and the forest air smelled of wet leaves and pine. Lila helped her mother spread out the picnic blanket near a small open area by the stream. Her father unpacked sandwiches and fruit, while her brother played with a toy car in the dirt. Lila was the kind of child who couldn't sit still for long. She liked to explore, to find hidden trails and collect tiny flowers. Her mother always reminded her not to go too far, and Lila always promised she wouldn't. While her parents were busy setting up lunch, Lila noticed a small yellow butterfly fluttering near the bushes. It hovered for a moment, then drifted farther into the woods. Smiling, she decided to follow it. It seemed like a short walk, just a few steps beyond the picnic spot. But the butterfly kept moving, and so did she. The sound of her family faded behind her as the trees grew thicker and taller. The forest was peaceful, but the deeper she went, the more the air changed. The sounds of birds grew softer, and the rustle of leaves under her shoes echoed louder. She didn't realize how far she had gone until she turned around and couldn't see the picnic area anymore. For a moment, she thought she'd just retrace her steps, but everything looked the same: trees, rocks, and shadows. She called out for her mother, but the wind carried her small voice away. Thinking she might have taken the wrong turn, she tried walking back, but every direction seemed to lead her deeper into the woods. When her mother called her name a few minutes later, Lila didn't answer because she couldn't hear her anymore. At first, her parents thought she was just playing nearby. "She never goes far," her father said with a small laugh. But after 10 minutes, worry began to grow. Her mother started walking toward the trees, calling louder. Her voice cracked a little when there was no reply. The father followed, shouting Lila's name again and again, each time louder than before. As the minutes turned into an hour, fear replaced laughter. The picnic basket was left open and the blanket was forgotten. They ran in different directions, searching, calling, and hoping to hear her small voice answer back. Her brother sat quietly by the stream, confused and scared, clutching his toy car. The forest that had seemed peaceful in the morning now felt endless and strange. By afternoon, they had alerted nearby hikers and park rangers. Within hours, dozens of people joined the search: volunteers, police, even dog units. Flashlights moved like fireflies through the trees as night fell. The sound of people calling her name filled the air. Her mother refused to go home. She sat by the picnic spot long after dark, whispering Lila's name again and again, hoping she would run out from behind a tree with her usual big smile. But Lila never came back that night. Somewhere deep in the woods, she had stopped walking and curled up under a fallen tree trunk. She was scared, hungry, and tired. She thought if she just slept for a bit, someone would find her in the morning. She could still hear faint sounds far away. Maybe the searchers, maybe the wind. The forest seemed alive at night with strange noises she couldn't understand. Every crack of a branch made her shiver. She hugged herself tightly and whispered that she wanted to go home. The next morning, search teams continued. Helicopters hovered over the forest and local news stations began reporting about the missing girl. Neighbors brought food and flashlights, and strangers showed up to help. The town was small, and everyone knew everyone. People prayed together, walked through muddy paths, and checked every corner of the woods. But the forest was large and unpredictable. Rivers, cliffs, and thick undergrowth made it difficult to search. Her parents didn't sleep. Her mother kept walking, barefoot at times, refusing to rest. Her father tried to stay strong, talking to police officers, answering questions that felt impossible. Was she scared of animals? Did she ever try to run away? Did she know the area well? Every question made his voice break a little more. All he could say was that she loved the forest, but she would never wander far. Days passed. Rain came, washing away footprints and scent trails. The dogs lost her trail. Some people said maybe a wild animal took her. Others thought she might have fallen into the river. But there was no proof, no sign, not a piece of clothing, not a single clue. It was as if the forest had swallowed her whole. Weeks turned into months. The official search ended, but her parents didn't stop looking. Her father went into the woods almost every weekend calling her name, following new leads that never led anywhere. Her mother left the porch light on every night. She couldn't bear the thought of her daughter being out there in the dark. Every time the phone rang, she hoped it would be news. But it never was. People in town tried to comfort them. Some said time would heal, but it didn't. The empty chair at the dinner table, the untouched toys, the silent house, everything reminded them of her. Her brother grew quieter, sensing the sadness that filled the house. Sometimes he'd ask if Lila would come back, and her mother would just hold him and say, "One day maybe." Every year on the same date they returned to that forest with flowers. Her mother placed them by the same stream where they had last been together. She talked softly, as if Lila could still hear her. Her father stood nearby, silent but broken. They didn't know if she was alive, if she had suffered, or if she was at peace somewhere. The not knowing was the hardest part, but what no one realized was that deep in that same forest, beyond where the search teams had reached, Lila was still alive. Somehow she had made it through that first terrifying night. She had followed the sound of running water and found a place to stay hidden. She had learned to move quietly, to eat what the animals ate, and to listen to the forest instead of fearing it. She was only 8, but something inside her refused to give up. As days turned into weeks, she began to change. The fear didn't leave, but she learned to live with it. She remembered her mother's voice, her father's smile, and her brother's laughter, memories that kept her strong. While the world searched and then slowly forgot, she was learning to survive in a place that had almost taken her. Back in town, the years would pass, but her mother would never lose hope. Even when others stopped talking about it, she still believed that somewhere out there her little girl was alive, and she was right. Lila wasn't gone. She was just lost, waiting for the world to find her again. The first few days after Lila got lost were the hardest. She didn't know which way to go or what to do. She cried until she couldn't cry anymore. The forest was big and quiet, and at night every sound felt louder. She missed her mother's voice and her father's laughter. She called out their names many times, hoping someone would answer, but all she heard was the echo of her own voice bouncing through the trees. At first she thought someone would come soon. Maybe she'd see a ranger or a search team with flashlights, but no one came. She waited by a fallen tree for hours, then for a whole day. Hunger started to bother her, and she felt weak. When she saw a few red berries on a bush, she hesitated. Her mother once told her not to eat strange things, but hunger pushed her to try. Luckily, they didn't make her sick. She didn't eat much, but it was enough to give her a bit of strength to keep moving. She followed the sound of water until she found a stream. It looked clean, so she drank from it. The water was cold and refreshing, and for a moment she felt brave again. She decided to stay near the stream, thinking that maybe people searching for her would pass by. She built a small shelter using fallen branches and leaves. It wasn't much, but it made her feel a little safer. At night, she curled up in a ball, listening to the sound of the forest. She heard the hoots of owls and the rustle of small animals moving in the dark. Sometimes she thought she saw shadows between the trees, but they always disappeared when she blinked. She tried to remember what her mother used to say when she was scared. "Just breathe, sweetheart, you're not alone." Those words became her comfort when the nights felt endless. Days turned into weeks. Lila began to learn how to survive in small ways. She discovered that some berries made her stomach hurt, so she avoided those. She found nuts and mushrooms, watched birds, and followed small animals to see what they ate. Sometimes, she caught fish from the stream using her hands, though most of the time they slipped away. She grew thinner, her hair tangled, her clothes dirty and torn, but she kept moving. One afternoon, while she was sitting near the stream, she heard something behind her. the sound of footsteps. She froze. Her heart raced as she turned slowly, expecting to see a person. But instead, it was a dog, thin, brown, and cautious. It looked wild, but not dangerous. The dog sniffed the air, watching her carefully. Lila held her breath, unsure what to do. She picked up a piece of bread crust she still had from the picnic bag and placed it on the ground. The dog stepped closer, sniffed it, and took it. That night, the dog didn't leave. It lay down a few feet away, watching her. In the morning, when she got up, it followed her quietly. She started talking to it, even though she knew it couldn't answer. "You can stay," she whispered, "but don't go far." The dog wagged its tail slightly as if it understood. In the days that followed, more dogs appeared, maybe 3 or 4 in total. They were all thin and looked like strays. At first she was scared, but they didn't hurt her. Slowly she realized they could help her. When she walked, they followed. When she slept, they surrounded her, keeping her warm. They barked when strange noises came from the woods. In a strange way, they became her family. She learned to move with them and to find food where they did, to sleep when they rested. The forest stopped feeling like an enemy and started to feel like a home she had to understand. She followed the sun to know direction, the sound of birds to guess when rain was coming. She learned to make small fires using rocks and dry leaves, though it took her months to figure it out. Fire became her safety. It kept animals away and gave her light when the nights felt too long. Over the years, Lila changed. Her voice grew quiet and she spoke less and less. There was no one to talk to except the dogs. She forgot some words, replaced them with sounds or gestures. Her body became strong. She could climb trees easily, walk barefoot over sharp stones, and sense danger before she saw it. The forest shaped her into someone different. Not the little girl who once went on picnics, but someone wild, silent, and brave. She didn't count days anymore. She didn't even know how many birthdays had passed. Sometimes she'd look up at the stars and try to remember how her mother used to tuck her in at night. She could still picture her mother's smile, the way her brother would giggle when they played hide and seek. But those memories felt like dreams and far away and fading. She didn't want to forget, but her mind was changing, filled with new sounds, smells, and instincts. Sometimes, she would wander near places where she thought she had been before, hoping she might find something familiar. Once she found an old shoe by the riverbank. She held it for a long time, wondering if it was hers. Another time she saw smoke rising from far away, maybe from campers or searchers, but fear kept her from going closer. People had become something she didn't understand anymore. The forest felt safer. The seasons changed again and again. Winters were the hardest. Snow covered the ground and finding food became almost impossible. She would curl up inside a cave with the dogs, sharing warmth. Sometimes she thought she wouldn't survive another cold night, but somehow she always did. In spring, she felt alive again, running through the trees barefoot, chasing sunlight like that butterfly she once followed long ago. There were moments when she cried without knowing why. Maybe because she missed something she couldn't name. The sound of music, the smell of her mother's cooking, the comfort of being held. Sometimes she would stand by the stream and whisper softly to herself, trying to remember how to say her family's names. But the words felt heavy on her tongue, strange and distant. One summer, she found a broken mirror from what looked like an old campsite. When she looked at her reflection, she didn't recognize the face staring back. Her hair was long and wild, her skin sunburned, her eyes sharper than before. For a long time, she just stared. Then she touched her own cheek as if to remind herself she was still human. Years passed this way, quietly, rhythmically, like the beating of a heart that refused to stop. The forest gave her everything she needed to survive, but not what she missed most: love, warmth, a home. Sometimes she imagined hearing her mother's voice calling her name from far away. She would run toward the sound only to realize it was the wind. Still, she kept listening, hoping one day the voice would be real. She was no longer the 8-year-old girl who disappeared. She was something else now. A young woman who had learned to live where no one could. Her world was the forest. Her friends were the animals. Her memories were fading, but her will to survive never left. What she didn't know was that somewhere beyond those trees, her mother still waited, never giving up, never letting go of hope. The world had forgotten her story, but her mother hadn't. And while Lila built fires under the stars and shared food with the dogs who had become her family, destiny was slowly preparing a way for her to be found again, though she didn't know it yet. The years after Lila's disappearance changed everything for her family. The little house that was once full of laughter became quiet and heavy with sadness. Her mother tried to keep life moving, but every morning began with the same thought. Maybe today someone will find her. She kept Lila's room exactly as it was. The bed stayed neatly made, the toys untouched, the window curtains tied just like her daughter had left them. Every time she walked by that door, she would pause for a second, take a deep breath, and whisper a short prayer. Her father handled the pain differently. In the beginning, he joined every search. He climbed hills, crossed rivers, shouted her name until his voice cracked. But after months of searching with no sign, something inside him started to break. He blamed himself quietly, thinking he should have watched her more closely. He worked longer hours, trying to stay busy, but nothing really distracted him. When people asked how he was, he just nodded, never saying much. Their son, who had been only 4 when it happened, grew up watching his parents change. He didn't fully understand why everyone spoke about his sister like a memory, not a person. Sometimes he'd ask questions that made his mother cry. "If she comes back, will she still remember me?" he once asked softly. His mother hugged him tight and whispered, "She'll always remember you." Even if she didn't know if that was true, she wanted to believe it. The police had closed the case after a year, calling it a presumed loss. But her mother refused to sign any papers that said her daughter was gone. She kept every flyer, every photo, every article about the search. Some nights she sat by the window, staring at the dark forest in the distance, wondering if her little girl was still somewhere out there, waiting for help. People in town tried to move on. New families came, new children played in the park, and life kept going. But every now and then, someone would bring up the story of the girl who vanished. It became part of the town's history. A sad mystery people whispered about when they passed the forest road. Every few years, someone claimed they saw something strange deep in the woods. A small figure moving quickly between the trees, or footprints that didn't look like a hiker's. One hunter swore he saw a wild girl near a stream at dawn, but no one believed him. They said it was probably an animal, or his eyes playing tricks on him. Still, his story spread quietly. A few curious people even went to look for themselves, but found nothing. Her mother never stopped going there. Once a year, on the same date Lila had gone missing, she would visit the forest with flowers. Her husband went with her at first, but as time passed, he found it too painful. So she started going alone. She would stand by the same stream where they'd picnicked that day, leave the flowers on a rock, and whisper softly, "We're still waiting for you." Even after 11 years, the pain never really left her. Sometimes, she would wake up in the middle of the night thinking she heard footsteps in the hallway or someone calling her name. It was always just a dream, but she never stopped listening. Her son grew older, finished school, and started working in town. He didn't talk about his sister much, but deep down he carried a quiet hope that maybe she was still alive somewhere. He often helped his mother with her small garden. While they worked together, she would sometimes tell stories about Lila, how she loved drawing, how she once cried because she couldn't catch a butterfly, how she always shared her food. These small stories helped her mother feel close to her again. One evening, a local newspaper published an article about unsolved disappearances of the last decade. Lila's name was there, along with a few others. The article included a digitally aged photo, showing what she might look like at 19. Her mother cut out the picture and placed it in a frame on the kitchen table. Every morning she looked at it and whispered, "Where are you, my girl?" Meanwhile, in the forest, Lila had grown into a young woman. She didn't know how many years had passed, but the world beyond the trees had changed. The forest had become quieter. Fewer hunters came, fewer hikers explored. Sometimes she would see airplanes passing above, leaving white trails across the sky, and she wondered where they were going. Back in town, strange stories began spreading again. A couple who went camping near the hills claimed they heard footsteps around their tent at night. Another group of hikers found a small shelter made of sticks and dried leaves, with animal bones neatly arranged nearby. It didn't look like something built by animals. The police checked the area but found nothing. Still, whispers began again about the forest girl. A few months later, two teenage hikers came running into town, frightened and excited. They said they had seen a girl near the river, barefoot, dressed in animal skins, her hair long and tangled. They said she moved fast and disappeared into the trees before they could get close. Most people laughed it off, saying they must have imagined it. But the story reached the local paper again, and soon everyone was talking about it. Her mother heard about it while shopping at the grocery store. Someone mentioned it casually, not realizing who she was. She froze, her hands shaking as she clutched her basket. "A girl in the forest?" she asked, trying to sound calm. The woman nodded. "Yeah, some kids swear they saw her. Probably just someone camping, but it's strange." That night, her mother couldn't sleep. She found the old map of the forest and marked the area near the river. Early the next morning, she drove there. She didn't care what anyone thought. She walked for hours, calling softly, just like she used to all those years ago. "Lila, it's Mom. I'm here, sweetheart." The trees echoed her voice, but no one answered. Still, she felt something different that day, a strange warmth, as if she wasn't as far away from her daughter as she once was. Back home, she told her son what had happened. He wanted to believe her, but he also didn't want her to get hurt again. "Mom, it could be anyone," he said gently. But she shook her head. "A mother knows," she whispered. "I felt her." Over the next few weeks, the forest became busy again. Reporters visited, curious explorers walked the trails, and drones flew above looking for signs of the wild girl. No one found anything clear, but they did find signs, small footprints near the stream, remains of old fires, and places where someone had built small shelters. Each discovery made her mother's heart beat faster. She knew it wasn't just a story. People in town started debating. Some said it was impossible. Others said miracles happen. A few locals even started volunteering to help search again, just like in the old days. Hope, which had been silent for years, started to come alive again. Her mother began going back to the forest more often, bringing food, blankets, and leaving them near the stream. Sometimes she found them untouched. Other times they were gone. That was enough for her, proof that maybe, just maybe, someone was still out there. The town buzzed with talk again. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted to know the truth. But deep in the woods, Lila stayed hidden. The world beyond the trees was a mystery she wasn't sure she wanted to face. She had lived too long in silence, too long with the wind and the animals. The thought of people frightened her more than being alone ever did. Still, something inside her had begun to change. When she saw a piece of bright red cloth tied to a branch, left there by her mother, she stopped and stared. The color reminded her of something she once had, maybe a dress, maybe a memory. For the first time in years, she didn't turn away immediately. She stood there quietly, her heart beating faster, as if some forgotten part of her knew. Someone was looking for her again. And soon, the world would find her. The summer morning started like any other for a group of hikers exploring the forest near the old river trail. The sun was bright, the air was clear, and the forest seemed calm. They walked along the narrow path, chatting quietly, when one of them noticed movement near the trees on the other side of the stream. At first they thought it was an animal, but then the figure stood up. It wasn't an animal at all. It was a person, small, thin, and barefoot. The figure moved quickly, almost silently through the bushes. The hikers froze. "Did you see that?" one whispered. They could just make out long, tangled hair and a torn piece of cloth hanging loosely from the person's shoulder. She looked frightened. Before anyone could say another word, she vanished back into the trees. The group hurried back to town, shaken and excited. They told the park rangers what they saw. The rangers didn't dismiss them. Not this time. There had been too many strange reports lately. Within hours, a small search team was formed to check the area. They started the next morning, moving slowly and carefully through the forest. They followed the stream where the hikers said they had seen her. The air was quiet except for the crunch of dry leaves under their boots. Then one of the rangers spotted something near the water. Footprints. Small bare footprints pressed into the mud. They looked fresh. The team followed the trail deeper into the woods. They found signs of someone living there. A handmade shelter made of branches and leaves, a fire pit with ashes still warm, and animal bones neatly placed nearby. One of the rangers crouched and whispered, "Whoever's been here, they're close." They decided to stay silent and move slowly. Hours passed. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, near a cluster of tall trees, they saw movement again. This time they didn't rush. A figure stepped out from behind a tree, a young woman, thin and sunburned, with long, dark hair tangled like vines. Her clothes were made from pieces of old fabric and animal hide. Her eyes were wide, alert, and filled with fear. She saw them before they could speak. For a moment, everyone just stood still. One of the rangers slowly took off his backpack and placed it on the ground, showing his empty hands. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're not here to hurt you." But she didn't understand. She took a step back, her breathing fast and shaky. They didn't move closer. Instead, one of them took out a piece of bread from a lunch bag and placed it on the ground. Then they stepped back. She looked at it confused, then at them again. Her stomach growled softly, for the sound broke the silence. After a long pause, she stepped forward cautiously and picked up the bread. She smelled it, then took a small bite. Her hands trembled as she ate. The rangers stayed still, speaking only in calm, quiet voices. "We're friends," one of them said gently. "You're safe." But she didn't answer. When one of them took a step forward, she flinched and ran into the trees again. They didn't chase her. Instead, they marked the spot and returned the next day, bringing food, water, and blankets. They left them near the stream, then hid nearby. After some time, she returned. She took the food and water, but kept looking around nervously, as if she feared it was a trap. This continued for several days. Each time she came a little closer. Each time the ranger spoke softly, never shouting or moving too fast. Slowly, she began to recognize their faces. She didn't speak, but she stopped running away. After a week, they decided to try to reach her again. When she appeared by the stream, one of the rangers sat down on the ground to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said quietly. "We want to help you." She watched him for a long time, then pointed at his bottle of water. He handed it to her carefully. She drank, keeping her distance but not running this time. Her eyes softened just a little. They didn't know her name yet. They didn't know her story. But the older ranger couldn't shake a thought. What if this was the girl from all those years ago? The one who vanished when she was 8. When they finally managed to get close enough, they gently guided her toward their camp. She was scared, confused by the sight of tents, tools, and people. The sound of voices made her cover her ears. They offered her a blanket, and she sat down quietly, her eyes darting around like a wild animal's. A medic examined her from a distance, making sure not to frighten her. She was thin but healthy enough to stand and walk. Her skin was sun-darkened and her hair was tangled, but her face looked strikingly familiar. The ranger radioed the town. "We found her. We think it's her." By the time they brought her out of the forest, news had already spread. Reporters gathered outside the hospital, their cameras flashing as the rescue vehicle arrived. She squinted at the lights, covering her face, not understanding why everyone was staring. To her, the noise in the crowd felt like danger. Doctors and specialists surrounded her gently, speaking softly, using signs and smiles more than words. She barely spoke at all, only muttering a few broken sounds. She didn't remember language the way others did. She had lived too long without hearing voices. DNA tests were done quickly, and within days the result came back. It was her. She was Lila, the little girl who had vanished 11 years ago. The news spread across the country. Headlines read, "Lost at 8, found at 19, the girl who survived the wilderness." Her mother heard the news on television. At first, she didn't believe it. She thought it was another rumor. But when the phone rang and a police officer confirmed it, she fell to her knees, crying uncontrollably. Her son held her, tears in his own eyes. They couldn't believe it was real. When they reached the hospital, the reunion didn't go the way anyone expected. Lila didn't recognize them right away. She looked at her mother's face, tilting her head slightly, as if searching for something familiar. Her mother reached out carefully, her hands trembling. "It's me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm your mom." Lila stepped back at first, unsure. Then her mother started to cry, not loudly but softly, with a sound that came from deep in her heart. Lila watched her for a moment, then slowly reached out her hand. Her fingers touched her mother's face. Something inside her stirred, a memory she couldn't fully grasp. Her eyes filled with tears for the first time in years. Her mother pulled her gently into her arms. Lila didn't resist. She stood still, then wrapped her arms weakly around her. For the first time since she was a child, she felt warmth, a different kind of warmth than the fires she had built in the forest. This one came from love. Her brother stood nearby, unable to speak. He had waited so long for this day. When she finally looked at him, he smiled through his tears. "You're home," he said softly. The doctors told them it would take time for her to adjust. She didn't understand most words anymore. She was afraid of doors, closing, loud noises, and mirrors. She preferred sleeping on the floor rather than the bed. Every sound of a machine or the bright lights made her flinch. But she was safe now. Outside the hospital, people gathered, leaving flowers and notes. The whole town felt like they had witnessed a miracle. Those who once said she was gone forever now whispered in awe. The story of the girl who survived the wilderness touched everyone's heart. Lila stayed silent most of the time, but sometimes, late at night, her mother would sit by her side holding her hand, humming softly the same lullaby she used to sing when Lila was small, and sometimes Lila would hum along quietly, as if somewhere deep inside she still remembered every word. Here's Part 5 of She Was Lost at 8, Found at 19, Living Off the Land, written in simple, natural, human-style English, around 1,200 words, engaging and emotional while staying within YouTube's safe guidelines. When they brought her back from the forest, everyone expected joy. But the first few days were confusing and quiet. The girl who had once been full of laughter now sat in silence, her eyes darting from corner to corner as if every sound was a warning. The lights in the hospital room were too bright, and she often turned her head away, pressing her palms against her ears when machines beeped. Doctors and nurses spoke softly, but even their calm voices made her flinch. When someone came too close, she froze like a frightened animal. Food was placed in front of her, but she didn't know how to use the spoon. She would reach out with her hands, smell the food first, then take tiny bites, watching everyone around her, as if afraid they might take it away. Her mother couldn't stop crying when she first saw her. She had imagined this reunion 1,000 times, but standing in front of her daughter, she felt both joy and pain. The young woman sitting on the bed didn't look like the little girl she had lost. Her hair was long, tangled, and sun-faded. Her skin was tanned, marked by years of living outdoors. Her eyes were wild yet deep, filled with stories no one else could understand. The mother whispered her name over and over again, but the girl only stared. It was like she recognized the sound, but couldn't place where it came from. When the mother reached out to touch her hand, the girl hesitated, then slowly placed her hand on top of hers. It was a small moment, but everyone in the room felt it, the first sign that she remembered something. Days turned into weeks. The doctor said her body was strong for someone who had lived so long in the wild, but her mind was a different story. They said she needed time, therapy, and gentle surroundings. The mother took her home after a month, even though everyone warned it would be hard. She didn't care. She had lost her once and wasn't ready to let go again. At home, everything felt new to the girl. She didn't understand the noise of cars, the sound of a vacuum, or the buzz of a phone. The bed felt strange, too soft. She preferred sleeping on the floor near the window, where she could see the trees. She woke up early every morning and stood by the window for hours watching birds. Sometimes she would make low humming sounds, almost like talking to them. Her brother, now grown, tried to reconnect. He remembered her as the cheerful little sister who loved climbing trees and chasing butterflies. Now she barely spoke, using only short words or gestures. Once he brought her a bowl of strawberries, her favorite fruit as a child. She smelled one, looked at him for a long time, then smiled faintly before eating it. That tiny smile made him tear up. It was the first time she had shown emotion since coming home. Rehabilitation wasn't easy. Specialists visited her every week. They used pictures, songs, and games to help her remember language. At first, she resisted sitting silently or walking away. But slowly, words began to return, simple ones like water, tree, and mother. She struggled with sentences. But when she managed to say, "I remember river," her mother cried for hours. Her memories came in pieces, like fragments of a broken mirror. She remembered rain on leaves, the sound of wolves howling at night, the cold during winter. She remembered how she had learned to make fire from stones, how she followed animal trails to find food, and how she once hid in a hollow tree during a storm. But when they asked if she remembered the day she got lost, she shook her head. Maybe her mind had buried that pain too deep. As months passed, she began to explore the outside world again, but only small steps. Her mother took her to a nearby park early in the morning when no one was there. At first, she stayed close, gripping her mother's hand. Then one day she let go and walked barefoot on the grass. She closed her eyes, feeling the wind on her face. That moment was quiet but powerful. It was like she was home again, in a safer way this time. People in town talked about her. Some called her a miracle, others called her the forest girl. But her family protected her from too much attention. They wanted her to live normally, not as a story on TV. Still, sometimes reporters would show up wanting an interview. The mother always refused. She said her daughter wasn't a story. She was a person trying to heal. Over time, Lila, as people now called her again, began helping in small ways around the house. She watered plants, fed the family's dog, and even learned to make tea. Her mother noticed she felt calm when near animals, so they got her a kitten. She would sit for hours with it in her lap, softly whispering to it in her own quiet way. One evening, during a family dinner, her brother played a soft tune on his guitar. Suddenly, she began to hum along. It was the same lullaby their mother used to sing years ago. Everyone stopped eating, stunned. She looked around shyly, as if realizing what she had done, and smiled again, this time wider. Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. The music had unlocked something deep inside her. The seasons changed, and so did she. Her words became clearer, her laughter more natural. Though she still preferred quiet places, she no longer feared the world outside. She started walking in the woods again, this time with her brother beside her. He would ask her to tell him what she saw: tracks, nests, flowers, and she taught him things even nature guides didn't know. It was as if the forest had trained her to see life differently. Years later, she agreed to share her story for the first time. It wasn't for fame or money. It was to help missing children's organizations. She said she wanted to tell people never to stop looking and never to lose hope. Her words were few, but they carried weight. When someone asked her how she survived all those years, she simply said, "The forest kept me safe. I listened and it listened back." She didn't remember everything about her past, and she didn't need to. She had found peace in the balance between her two worlds. Sometimes she still walked into the forest alone, sitting by the same kind of rivers she once drank from. Her mother used to worry, but soon realized she always came back. She wasn't lost anymore. One late afternoon, her brother found her sitting under a tree, sketching birds in a small notebook. She looked up and said softly, "I like both worlds now." He smiled, knowing how far she had come. Life had taken her away once, but somehow it had brought her back stronger, quieter, wiser. The little girl who was lost at 8 had turned into a young woman who found meaning in silence, strength in nature, and love in family. And though she never spoke much about those 11 lost years, her eyes always told the story of fear, survival, and a strange, gentle understanding between her and the wild world that once kept her alive. When she looked at the forest from her window at night, she didn't see danger anymore. She saw a friend, one that had taken care of her when the world couldn't. And as she stood there, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, she smiled. Not because she remembered everything, but because she finally knew who she was. She wasn't lost anymore. She was home.